All right, we're back. Got a fun topic today. One that was a big life lesson for me, and it's about learning from people you disagree with, learning from people you like, learning from stuff you don't like. Um, broader conversation topic embedded in this too is like, should you always be trying to please everybody? Should you always be aiming for agreeableness? What are the pros and cons of all that? I think this is a fun topic because I personally struggled with it for so long where unless I agreed with somebody for some reason, I had a default to just like shut my brain off to anything that they said, particularly when they give criticism. I know you got a lot of opinions about this, so I wanted to kick it off into your court. What, when did this become a thing for you where you recognize that there's, possibility from learning from people who you disagree with? And what are some mental models you use to help stay objective?
Yeah, this is a really fun one. I think as humans, like if there's something that if we disagree with somebody on something, our natural tendency is to oppose them on everything. And like you said, we want to shut down and just either be like angry at the thing that they're promoting or an idea or their position or whatever it is, instead of opening up and be like, okay, like I disagree with the idea, but what about the strategy that they're using to get their message out? Can I actually learn from and take away? Let's just start. Like, what are we actually talking about here? Like, what are different instances of this?
Yeah. I think it's easy to start with some examples and then go more broad from there. But I know one in particular. This is my bugaboo. So Gary Vaynerchuk is somebody who is absolutely phenomenal at getting people's attention. He's a social media expert. I think this guy understands how to get eyeballs on his content better than maybe anybody else on the planet. And a handful of years ago, when I first came across Gary V's stuff, it was like, I was like in my early 20s, and he was talking all about this like hustle, you gotta grind, you gotta work, and shooting a video selfie of him and like in the back of a cab at 3 a.m. He's like, you rise and grind, and like this like hustle porn thing. And that was cool for a minute. And then as I started to get a little bit older and like struggled with, the temptation to work till burnout myself. And I just started thinking about it. I was like, I don't really agree with his messages. And there's so much here with the way he does stuff that I just do not like. And so I like stopped following him for a long time and was immediately turned off anytime anybody brought him up as an example on how to do anything. And I think, yeah, I think it took me a long time to realize like, okay, that's one of the most prescient, top of mind examples, just because I still reference so much of his stuff today. I'm not like retweeting him and like promoting a lot of stuff, but and he's backed off some of the stuff that really turned me off. But there was a period of time where I would ignore even the stuff that was effective that he was doing and promoting. Right. And I think that's kind of detrimental when you approach it that way. So
yeah, I think that's a good example. And what's detrimental is not obviously disagreeing with like the ideas or the content. It's detrimental when you put that person or company or whatever in a box of like, I refuse to gain any type of insight from this person or organization or whatever. Whereas a lot of the times, those are the best people to learn from, especially if we're talking about like viral content and we're talking about marketing or sales or something, because the people that tend to be a little annoying, like I think there's something about that goes hand in hand with like getting a lot of eyeballs and traffic on your stuff.
Yeah. So I know there's one that there's an example we like that we talk about all the time. I think BaseCamp, I'm going to read a tweet that went pretty viral in the startup community, like on tech Twitter for a while. And whether you agree with it or not is beside the point. But Jason Fried, founder of BaseCamp, here's his tweet. Giving out equity in startup benefits ownership way more than employees. It allows the owners to push employees harder and harder because you've got skin in the game now. You're an owner. No, you aren't. Owning less than 1% of anything isn't ownership. And immediately, all the comments, like most of the comments, all these people, big names, startup tech, Twitter, like disagreeing. And then like some people came and rallied. But this was like a week or two, people just like jumping in and furious, like flying off the handle, mad, disagreeing. And what a fun example.
I mean, they know what they're doing with that type of content.
Yeah. The thing is, like, I think that Jason Fried, DHH, both of them, they're very active on Twitter. They're well known for strong, controversial opinions, whether that's their aim or not, but they know how to get attention. And this is the thing that I'm drawing now from this. I think several years ago I was blind to this, but I think I'm getting more cognizant of this, is like, who cares how many people disagree with them? They're not trying to hire those people.
Well, yeah, okay. So let's actually come at it from their perspective. If it's not just, hey, they believe these ideas and, you know, they're going to say what they want to say. Like, I think that's obvious. I think that's part of it. Like, I have no doubts that the messages that they do promote and the ones that are particularly about work culture and position,
Yep.
and everything, like how they've built their company at BaseCamp, they clearly believe in those things because they've shown it by how they've built the company.
Yep.
It's not just, you know, spouting stuff to get attention for the sake of getting attention. However, like, what, from their angle, what is the strategy? If it's not just, hey, I want to share something that I believe in that I think most people get wrong.
Yeah. So I'm not going to claim to know what they're thinking or believe that their approach is like, I'm going to tweet this thing because I know it's going to piss everybody off. And let's forget that particular tweet. I know occasionally I'll see tweets that either one of them send out that go nuts. They get a ton of attention. I'm like, I disagree with this. This is stupid or whatever. But like, you've got to think, if there is any strategy to it, you got to think these guys are really successful. They've got enough self-awareness to know they have a pulse on what people generally believe and disagree with. And that's the part that's fascinating to me, and learning from them, particularly when they send these tweets that go nuts, that I disagree with. Instead of disagreeing with it, it's like, wait, let's study this. Maybe there is a strategy behind this, because it seems like something that they regularly do really effectively.
Yeah.
Where
like once or twice a month, they have something that blows up and starts conversations and lots of angry debates and stuff.
Yeah, it's like playing into this idea of like recognizing how partisan politics works. Love or hate Donald Trump, like, I think on Twitter in particular, but even in the news cycles, like, this guy is always top of mind, whether you agree with him, disagree with him, like him, don't like him. Like, his stuff is always in the conversation. And it's almost like playing into the fact that there's like this divisiveness to the way that he does it. And it like, it draws a line, like it unites people that agree with him. And it provokes the side that disagrees with him. And I think, you know, this isn't about politics, but the lesson to be learned there is, one, I don't really care about the political spectrum, but the thing that I'm learning from that now is like, this guy knows how to jack trends and like stay top of mind and get content in front of people. And that's one of those things where, as a marketer, that's a big lesson I learned.
Yeah. So for the BaseCamp guys specifically, I kind of take two things away that we can potentially use when it comes to marketing and sales and stuff. One is they have brilliantly positioned themselves and their company as like the anti-Silicon Valley tech company, software company.
Yeah.
And to just be able to differentiate yourself in that way, particularly when it comes to talent recruitment, that's a brilliant strategy that they've executed. And, for relevant to us at Praxis, like, all right, we're trying to think about how can we differentiate the program to reach the people that are going to be the best fits for it and continue to grow. And then the other thing, I think it's always a good reminder of don't be afraid to piss off people. Yeah. Don't piss off people just for the sake of getting people riled up and angry. But if that's a good way if it means that, hey, 80% of this audience is going to be pissed off by this, but the 20% of people we're trying to reach, it's going to resonate with them and that's going to bring them closer to us, then you should absolutely take advantage of that. There's nothing more morally wrong about that. Or I think some people would kind of stick up their nose like, well, that's just like playing dirty, or that's beneath me. Like it's absolutely not. Like your job is to reach the audience that you're trying to reach.
So bringing it back a little bit closer to the idea of what can we learn from these kind of things? I think that as far as sales and marketing goes, pissing people off, standing your ground, having a really strong point of view, that's all great. But as it applies to somebody, I'm early in my career, what takeaways actually matter to me when I think about being put in a situation where I either disagree with someone or something? Mm-hmm. What's the value in that? Here's some thoughts. I think that when you're early on, I know I had this problem. I think I've seen it with other people. There's this dangerous tendency to migrate toward people who are confirming that you're good, or they're giving you positive feedbacks. There's this positive feedback loop. We migrate towards those and we shy away from people who are giving us critical feedback. I think that's dangerous. How do you navigate that? How do you figure out what feedback should I listen to? What feedback should I not listen to? You can't just disagree with everybody all the time. But what's
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. I was like, that was a tough lesson for me, and I think that I'm still learning it to a degree. But what mental models do you use when you disagree with somebody, whether their feedback's good or not?
Yeah, so I think there's two kind of different circumstances that we're talking about. So one is when you're being given feedback directly.
Yeah.
Like you're not necessarily seeking out and figuring out hey, what can I take away from these people or this and whatnot. But when you're given feedback, let's just say all right, you're in your first 6 months at a new job and you're getting some pretty direct critical feedback. How can you make sure you don't, how can you make sure you take that well, even if you don't agree with everything? I honestly think I don't mean to say this the way I'm going to say it, but I've never had that big of an issue with taking feedback. And I think that's because I think I learned a lot growing up, mostly from playing sports.
Yeah.
Being in a high competitive environment where you have coaches that are speaking very directly to you. And especially when, you're 11, 12, 13 years old, you just kind of develop some thick skin on that type of stuff. But I think the advice I would give people is do not take it personally, and just take the feedback in. You don't have to react to every single thing. You're not in a courtroom. Your job is not to defend yourself. Specifically in a job, when you're being given feedback, the goal is to help you get better. And there will be times where maybe you have shitty managers and you feel like they're preventing you from doing your job better and their feedback. In those cases, you take it graciously. And if there are specific things that are worth discussing, do not become emotional and just objectively discuss them. Be like, hey, can ask for clarity, discuss like, hey, I'd like to walk through like, what do you think is a time that I've done this, etc. Honestly, I think more often than not, there's, even if you don't agree 100% with the feedback you're given, there's something you can take away, and like put the onus on yourself to figure out, okay, I don't agree with all this, but why is that? Like, make it a personal challenge. Like, okay, what's getting lost in communication? It could be that the perception that you have of your performance and the perception other people of your performance is off, but the actual outcomes in your performance is right. So a lot of the times it's just like a communication thing. But I think approaching feedback as something that, okay, like, it's your job to take away something positive from it. It's not your job to defend yourself as if you're on trial. And then the second thing, and I'll quickly touch upon this, is like what we've been talking about with these examples of like, hey, like, there's people that are worth learning from, that are doing different tactics and strategies, especially when it comes to like marketing and sales, that maybe we don't agree with the message, but there's something to learn from the strategy or something. I think this especially relates to marketing, and this especially relates to, building a business overall. If you can take on the mindset that your job is to study and analyze everything that's relevant, that's out there, and not make like judgment decisions on this stuff of like, oh, I don't like that, I don't like this. What is this person talking about? Like, what your job is to figure, like, how can you steal from people that are doing something good? Whether it's, maybe sometimes it is the actual content and the ideas. Sometimes it's how they're getting their message out and what they're doing there. I like, there's no downside to that. And then it becomes a really fun game to like always be thinking about like, hey, what can I learn from these different companies, these different people? Like having, we have a swipe file in Slack, like having
got to steal like an artist.
Having a mental swipe file for all that type of stuff.
Yeah, I like that. I think that approach takes a lot of discipline in terms of like the feedback part, like trying to take a step back. Why do I disagree with that? Your ego is less fragile than mine. I have to like take a breather sometimes where it's like, why am I so mad by that feedback? Is it because it's accurate, or is it because like, do I have some beef with this person, or did they rub me the wrong way, or whatever? I think that's just a learning thing. You get better at time.
I mean, and that's like, I think it's okay to have that initial reaction. Like, yeah, maybe that's something somebody wants to improve on personally. They're like, I get heated too quickly, or I, too quickly take something personal and get angry. Like, that's something more long-term to work on. But if you do have that, if that's your tendency, then I think the best thing you can do is take a breath and just like sit back for a second and not immediately think to react in those situations.
Yeah, I think even in the situations, like, I know I've gotten better at this over time. It's been a concentrated thing of like, try to hear what's important and not get worried about the underlying emotional intangibles here. But sometimes feedback that just hits you the wrong way is just wrong. Yeah. And there's something to be like, there's value to be had from people giving you wrong feedback. That I like to think of it as ammunition or like fuel for the fire sometimes. I know that there have been a number of times where people have told, well, feedback I've gotten has been just absolutely out of touch with reality. And it doesn't happen very often. Most people are generally somewhat directionally correct, but sometimes that's been a thing where you wrestle with, where it's like, okay, is there some value I can get from this? Was something right? Is this a problem with myself? But sometimes it's just like, this feedback's bad and it pissed me off, and now I'm going to use that. I'm going to channel it into, creating something even better than what they had in mind. So I want to
step back a little bit on your shoulder.
Yeah, the chips on the shoulder thing is really valuable. So I'm going to step a little bit back from feedback, specifically, and I want to talk about like the importance. I think it's really important, beyond just feedback, to expose yourself to ideas that you disagree with every now and then. And here's something that I think is always a good and interesting metric when you're talking to somebody. For the first time you're getting to know somebody, is like asking them, like, when's the last time you changed your mind about an important belief?
Yeah.
And I think that is one of those things that the more frequently, you don't have to be like changing your mind about big stuff all the time. Maybe you are, the younger you are and the less you know about the world, like probably the more rapidly you're prototyping with ideas or whatever. But what I think it represents is like, I think there's this tendency to get stagnant and like buried in the things that you believe, and wall yourself off from ideas that like are harmful to your preconceived notions. And that is maybe one of the most harmful, like stagnating things for somebody's personal growth.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a professional standpoint, I want to know if you have strong critical thinking skills, and that you're somebody that is more naturally intellectually curious. Like those are two things that are highly valuable. And two things that I definitely like measure someone's long-term potential on. And just from a personal standpoint, like if you're not thinking through your existing beliefs, at least from time to time, doesn't have to be a constant change, because that signals something else. Then I mean, you're just leaving opportunity to improve yourself, and you should be improving yourself. You should be growing over time. What I agree that it's valuable to seek out, ideas, and whether that means like personal or philosophical ideas and like your personal values, or that could be political ideas, or that could be like business tactics and strategies. I think that's a hard thing for people to naturally do. What are there any like best practices you've developed to like kind of force yourself to seek those out?
So I don't know about best practices, or that this is any kind of formal thing I exercise, but there is kind of this habitual tendency I have is, and people have told me this before, is like, I know somebody told me a long time ago, is like, you have this tendency to become monomaniacal about new ideas. Whenever you get excited about a new idea, you just become absolutely monomaniacal. And whatever it is, whether it's like a new technology or a new industry I'm interested in studying about, I sit down and I read absolutely everything. I brain dump every article. I usually take notes. And what I found myself over time, like especially when I was younger, is like I would only go look for things that corroborated what I already believed. And now I try to get a full understanding, because I know there are so many things that I think I believe. I'll talk about one recently that I've been interested in, is this idea of like inequality. So there's all these opinions about, inequality in the world. What causes it? Is it good or bad? And I have like my own philosophical and, somewhat shallow into the pool economic beliefs about how I feel about this or whatever. But like, honestly, seeing all this hysteria over the past like handful of months with all these different things happening in the world, I realized I caught myself. I was like, I don't think I could defend an argument about why I believe the things that I believe. And so I asked several people, like, what are the best books to go read about this? And I went and I made a list and added like a bunch of podcasts to my queue of like things that I didn't even know who these people were. I literally just typed in economic inequality into like podcast, in Spotify, and like went and started a bunch of podcasts, and then like went and read a bunch of blog posts. And it wasn't like I had to, when I do that, it's not very often that I find myself actively seeking out intentionally stuff I may or may not agree with. But it's kind of that moment where it's like, if I was put on trial right now, I wouldn't be able to defend myself. And that kind of like makes me feel a little bit vulnerable. Like maybe I don't actually understand everything.
You're one of the few people who actually feels vulnerable if they're not able to defend their arguments.
I have to have an answer. And I have to be right, and probably fragile ego. But that's taken, almost 28 years of my life to like get to a point where it's like, okay, I got to step back, be a little bit objective, and just think like, what are all the sides of this? Because I can't put myself in the shoes of somebody who disagrees with me and understand why they even think that way. And, this is a continuous process of trying to get better at learning stuff. And I think it applies to any topic, but there's so much to learn. There's so much more value in approaching topic. I found so much more value personally, like approaching stuff that way than being like, okay, I disagree with those people. I'm not even going to listen to what they have to say at all.
Yeah. I think, and I think I think most people, if they are reading, like maybe they're going out of their way to read things that they disagree with, but I think the natural tendency is to like be in a defensive mode, even if you're doing that. And I think there's something to say, just like I'm reading, like I'm trying to just better understand this point of view. And it's not even about like feeling, you don't even have to have an intention of like, hey, I'm kind of questioning my own beliefs right now.
Yeah.
And you don't have to have the intention of like, well, I need to like be able to better defend my own ideas. Like, I think there's value in just being able to understand something for the sake of understanding it.
Yeah.
And like that allows you to better relate to people and better understand where they're coming from. It doesn't require you having to, build up this case and then, ultimately decide, I believe this or I believe that type of thing. Like just understanding things for the sake of understanding them. I think I would like to see more of that in the world.
Yeah.
But, that might be a little idealist.
All right. I'm going to bring it home. Give you a chance to respond to if you come up with one idea, but I got one last kind of take home thought for, myself over the past 5 to 10 years. As far as it relates to like learning from people you disagree with, how do you handle situations, particularly as it relates to your career when you do disagree with people and you're younger? And here's one of the things that I've learned from observing and from doing it wrong is there are times when your opinion doesn't matter and you should shut up and listen. And for the first several years in your career, it's probably better, particularly like when you're just starting out at a new company and you're lower on the totem pole. That's the time to take notes and ask a lot of questions. And it's probably not the time to get in heated debates about something, whether it's something's right or wrong or whatever. But over time, there's a transition where you've either been in a company long enough or a role enough, or you've gained enough experience that you're credible. And this doesn't mean like
or like you need to kind of push the envelope. Like, all right, like I need to step up on the credibility side to win this opportunity and like level up.
Yep. You can't just be spineless and mute if you really want to like take control and like, open opportunities for yourself. But there are more couth ways to do it. And there's a coworker I used to work with. This is one of my favorite experiences watching this on display, is like notorious for disagreeing with another person. We were on like a leadership team. These two were notorious for always disagreeing with one another. And for a while, it was just like, you knew anytime either one of them had an idea that the other one was just default going to disagree. And I don't think that was the case, but it sure seemed like it. But what I realized over time, and I came to admire about this colleague of mine who was always very disagreeable, is it wasn't about this person so much as like, I just wanted the best thing to be done. And I'm not going to shut my mouth as long as I think there's a better way for the team to be proceeding ahead. And that's something that over time I came to admire a lot. Yeah. Because I think sometimes there's this tendency to just disagree for disagreeing's sake without having a better idea. But for the people, when you do have a better vision, there's a better process or better way of doing things, and you disagree with other people, like that's an awesome opportunity to gain a lot of leverage for yourself. There are better tactics for presenting your arguments or whatever, but like being so committed to the end result and the company's success and the project's success or whatever, that you stop taking it personally and stop forget about whether you agree or disagree or you're going to hurt somebody's feelings. You just like defend the best version and the best outcome. Yeah. And that's a really cool lesson that I learned, more from observing and also from doing it wrong.
Yeah. It's such a good lesson. And it's on the company, if you're in a company setting, it's on the company to make sure you're in a type of environment where that's welcome, and that like everybody should be thinking that way. If you're not thinking that way, you're not doing your job as well as you can. Like your job is to help the company succeed. If you feel like there's something your team is not doing correctly, you need to say something. You also need to you better believe what you're saying is actually the case, and you're not just talking for the sake of talking and being able to put an opinion out there and tally up points on the opinion scoreboard and feel like you're doing something right. Because
that happens too, though.
Yeah, and it's funny. Like before we hit record on the session, we literally started on Zoom. I told you all right, we're gonna fight about something because we had a disagreement on the layout of a piece of content, like very small thing.
Yeah.
But I think it's easy in even those types of situations to just not say something and let it go. Like, especially when it's all right, that is this person's domain.
Yep.
I see something, but it's just not worth it. And the owner, everybody needs to have some level of ownership over everything.
Yeah. Well, it's not only that specific example too. That's not only an opportunity to try and make the end result better, but it's also if you don't say anything in that situation, you may be missing out on a learning opportunity. If it's in somebody else's area of domain, there may be a perfectly legitimate, well thought out reason for why they did something a particular way. And say what you have in mind. The feedback makes everybody a little bit better. And I think if everybody's doing a really good job and keeping the end goal in mind, it's a lot easier to be I'm not taking that as a personal attack or you trying to intrude on my domain. It's just I know you wanted good end product and so do I. And either I have a reason or maybe it was an oversight. Maybe it was an oversight that person didn't see. You
need to be comfortable being challenged, and you also need to be comfortable challenging others.
Yeah. And be able to move on quickly if you're wrong.
Right. Yeah. It's exactly you should be able to have heated discussions, and then after it's gone.
But done. Then go have a beer together and chill out and move on and let the, understand that everybody just wants the best.
There's not a single type of relationship that this does not apply to, by the way.
Yeah.
Life lessons right here.
Life lessons. You heard it here first. All right. That's it for today. We'll see you again soon.